Hi, I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. So at the time of the Clone Wars, the Republic Navy was a massive naval force. We're talking thousands of Venator-class Star Destroyers, and that's just one class of ships. Not nearly as big as the Imperial Navy, mind you, but still very, very large. Across the galaxy, the red markings of Republic ships signified the arrival of salvation and liberation, particularly during the days of the Confederacy. But at the end of the Clone Wars, as we all know, Palpatine ascended to the throne of Emperor, and the Republic became the Galactic Empire. Following the doctrines of the Galactic Empire, the Navy had to meet new demands. One problem, at that point, they have this massive fleet of very iconic ships that send the opposite message of what the Imperial military wants to send with their Navy. So what happened to the Venators with their brilliant red paint jobs that symbolized good coming to fight off evil after the fall of the Republic? Well, the stories differ a little between Legends and canon. I'm going to be focusing on canon today. So immediately following the end of the war, with the droid armies shutting down and the Republic Navy officially becoming the Imperial Navy, the fighting didn't stop. It seriously ratcheted down from the massive droid army versus the massive clone army to the now Imperial army fighting against separatist holdouts, worlds that were loyal to the separatists and many of whom were supplying manpower to supplement the droid forces. A great example of a planet that was providing soldiers to the separatists was Umbara, which we see in the Clone Wars. Now, they were under Republic control by the time of Order 66 and the end of the war, but what you see fighting the clone troopers in that one episode of the Clone Wars is made entirely of Umbarans. You don't see any battle droids in there. Planets like that were putting up resistance, and were being a thorn in the side for the Empire. So a lot of Republic forces ended up tied up in that, and that includes the Navy for the first couple months. During this time, the Navy was using Republic ships. They were still using the Venators, they were still using the V-Wings, they were still using ATTEs, they still had the Clone Trooper armor. It was basically the Republic by a different name. And the first notable visual change that was made was repainting. They repainted the Venator-class Star Destroyers and other ships of the Republic, but the Venators are the most notable, with this flat gray paint scheme, which would become sort of the iconic paint job of the Empire and things like the Imperial-class Star Destroyer later on. This was to really quickly erase that red Republic paint job that we see on a lot of Republic ships. But the Empire was quick to want to distance itself from the image of the Republic. The ships that people would still associate with salvation. The Empire had, by this time, began adopting the Tarkin doctrine of ruling through fear, and the ships of liberators were not going to instill fear in the population. So even though they had already been in production at the very end of the war, production of Imperial-class Star Destroyers was ramped up. And they began pretty quickly replacing the Venators. The V-Wings were very quickly replaced by the much cheaper TIE Fighters. And very early on, probably within the first 1 or 2 years of the Empire's existence, Republic military equipment was already really quickly being phased out. Now, this is a little bit of speculation because I don't think we have any real hard evidence on this, but my guess is a lot of this equipment was, well, a lot of it was actually scrapped or retired or torn down. A lot of it was probably pushed to fringe areas of the galaxy where you didn't need this big imposing force. I wouldn't be surprised seeing Imperial ATTEs and Venators kind of in some backwater outer rim areas, maybe even 10 years after the end of the Clone Wars. But we know a vast majority of the fleet, particularly in the core worlds and in places that were more problematic, were replaced very quickly with new Imperial machines of war. We see this in the opening of Jedi Fallen Order. About 5 years after the end of the Clone Wars, we see them tearing down Clone Wars era ships en masse. We see this massive, almost field of Venators being junked. And very early on in the reign of the Empire, the Imperial military shared almost no ships with its Republic predecessors. It was very quickly built into something completely new. The only notable exception to this, the only Republic ship to really serve in the Empire in a significant capacity throughout the entire duration of the Empire, actually, because we see it in Battlefront, is the Architens. The Architens class light cruiser, which served I believe it had the name the Jedi Light Cruiser in the Clone Wars, would serve as sort of a light frigate type role, as well as a small command ship during the entire duration of the Galactic Civil War, from the early days of the Empire to the fall of the Empire. I get the feeling the reason why that ship was kind of kept around when the rest of the Republic Navy was scrapped was because that one hadn't seen quite as much action, hadn't become quite as much of an icon as the Venator. That's just my theory as to why that stuck around and why the Venators and Acclamators were scrapped. So, like a lot of things in canon, the new factions and new eras are really quick to rush the elements of the old era out of existence. So if you enjoyed what you saw here today, or you just want more sci-fi discussions, head down below, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. And also don't forget to leave a like and a comment. Tell me what you thought of the fall of the Republic Navy. Is it too quick for you? Would you prefer it to last a little bit longer? Personally, I would have liked to see a little bit more time in there, because it goes away really, really fast. But tell me what you thought, with what we know now about how quickly it was sort of brushed under the rug. How do you feel about it? So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.